We are back. It's October 3rd, 2024, and we welcome you here to the Late Night Baseball Show, the first ever edition of the Late Night Baseball Show. I'm Anthony. I'll be with you here through your late night baseball journey. Also along for the ride is my friend and baseball savant, Parker. Parker, it is great to be here with you, man, kicking off Late Night Baseball. How are you?
I'm good, man. I miss this so much. You and I, for those of you who didn't follow us from our previous show, we used to do a show together, the Youtini Baseball Show, and we've just basically, this show is born completely out of a desperation of us two to continue to talk baseball constantly with each other, at least once a week. So I'm excited to be back. I've got like 17 Google Chrome tabs open as always, and I'm ready to just talk about playoffs and talk about what we've missed in the last couple of weeks.
Well, we're really jumping into it at a great time. We are right in the middle of, or I should say the beginning of the postseason. And, you know, like you said, Parker, I mean, we had so much fun with Youtini Baseball Show. They allowed us to put together really an awesome show over there. And, you know, for those of you who don't know too much about Youtini, they are an awesome Star Wars community that experimented with doing some baseball and some sports shows, and we were part of that. But they decided, rightfully so, like, hey, we should continue on the Star Wars stuff, and, you know, let's focus on that. And so that left us in a spot where we graciously bowed out of doing baseball with Youtini, but that meant that the Late Night Baseball Show was able to be born. So, Parker, I mean, we're here to have a good time, quite frankly. That's all this is about. We're here to talk baseball. There's no rules here on this show. It's late night for both of us. This is when we've gone through our day jobs. We're sitting here. We want to talk about baseball and bullshit, and that's what we're here to do. So everything is on the table. No topic is out of bounds, but we also are going to be fair here on the show. We're always going to be diving into the details of baseball because this sport deserves all the attention in the world.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the best time of the fucking year. It is October and it's baseball. Like, there was no way that I was going to be able to make it through this postseason without at least like calling you and talking about this stuff on the side. So might as well put microphones in front of each other and hit record because this is gonna be a good time. Yeah, there's a ton going on in the sport right now. A lot of really cool storylines, stuff that you're probably familiar with. From players that used to be a part of the White Sox organization and how our teams didn't make it into the playoffs. There's just so much stuff that we need to talk about. Plans moving forward into the offseason, how the playoffs are actually looking like they're going to shape out, because there's no favorite, and that's something that's been all over baseball social media over the last couple of weeks. There isn't a favorite this year. And I think that leaves us with one of the most wide open, intriguing playoff brackets we'd had in a long time. I mean, last year was a really good example that right now the playoffs are for like real true baseball fans. If you're listening to a baseball podcast, this is the playoffs for you, because it's going to be the most like out of left field, crazy shit baseball that you could possibly hope for. And we've already seen that in the wild card series.
We sure have. We'll dive into that more in a little bit. But before we do that, Parker, before we get into the stuff we have planned for the folks this evening, you kind of just mentioned it. For those of you who haven't listened to Parker and I before, Parker is a diehard Red Sox fan. I am a diehard White Sox fan, and with that comes a bunch of really just pain and self-loathing. So Parker, I just wanted to get your initial reaction, and we're gonna have a lot of time to talk about this in a couple weeks when we break down the season. But for you, just a brief, immediate reaction of that Red Sox season here in 2024.
The Red Sox season in 2024 was the epitome of mid. Like, there were a lot of low points, there were some high points, but when you finish the regular season 81-81, and along the course of the season, I don't have the tweet up in front of me, but someone was kind enough to break it down on Twitter. I know Chris Cotillo did it at one point, who's one of the Red Sox beat reporters for Mass Live. At several different points in the season, the Red Sox were 1-1. They were 2-2. They were 3-3. They were 5-5. They were 10-10. They were 11-11. They hit like at every given point in the season, they were a 500 baseball team. Half the time you tuned in, they won. Half the time you tuned in, they lost. And to be completely honest, I don't know that any like Red Sox fan that was truly tied into the offseason and paid a lot of attention to what was going on. I don't think we really expected a playoff team. I don't think we really expected a winning record. Honestly, 81 and 81 is better than I thought that they would end up. But the way that it happened and the glimpses of just incredible baseball that we got from this very young team and the way that it fell off in the end of the year when the Red Sox basically didn't add at the trade deadline and then the pieces they did got hurt immediately. Mm-hmm. It was a very poignant like showing of what happens when you don't fucking invest in your baseball team in the offseason and you don't reward good play with your players by giving them reinforcements at the trade deadline. So it was another very disappointing Red Sox season. You spend the whole year hoping you get to watch your team, play postseason baseball. You spend the whole year hoping that you get to hear a call like this.
Mm-hmm. Ooh.
You never get to hear that type of stuff anymore with Red Sox baseball.
No.
It's been so long. It's in 2020. Okay. The Red Sox made the postseason on the last day of the season in 2021. They made it to the ALCS. If Rafael Devers does not hit a home run to come back against the Washington Nationals in Washington to send the Red Sox to the playoffs, we are talking about 6 straight seasons of missing the playoffs, which for a Boston franchise is unacceptable. So that's where I'm at. Just another mid-season on a stack of mid-seasons. But
well, Parker,
this isn't the only team we're here to talk about. What about the White Sox?
Cry me a river, okay? Because let me tell you something right now, folks. I've been telling people this for the last couple weeks. My motto has been, if you're going to be the worst, be the best at being the worst. And sure as hell, the White Sox were the best at being the worst, right? The worst record in the history of modern baseball since 1900. The White Sox lost 121 games this year. Now, many of you are probably like, wow, this Anthony guy must be really down in the dumps. And part of me is. But I think I tend to be more of an objective fan. I mean, I think you and I, Parker, understand what it takes more than a lot of people to build a team, some of the patience that's involved in there, the culture of a team, the analytics, all of that. And I see that there is a path forward for this team. It sucks right now, but I took some really good positives away from the White Sox season. Their minor league system is better than it's been in a long time. I think they have a GM in there that is a lot better at this job and has a lot of what it takes to get this team where it needs to be. It just so happens that on the path to get there, we hit the rock bottom, the most bottom of bottom that you could absolutely be. And as a season ticket holder, it really sucks. It's painful. I invest my money into this team, but I can't walk away, and I refuse to. And so in a couple weeks here, I'm going to give you my full kind of State of the Union on this team, but I'm not all down on them right now, despite all the reasons I have to be.
Okay. I want you to say it out loud and explain for anybody who's not fully aware why this season was the lowest of the low.
Why this season was the lowest of the low? Well,
like, what is the number that we're talking about?
So we're talking about 120 wins was the most amount of wins by a team in the modern era since the 1962 losses in the modern era since the 1962 New York Mets. Okay, now mind you, this was a New York Mets that lost 120 games in their expansion first season ever. Okay, now there was a reason for them to lose 120.
Yeah, they were a double-A team.
Exactly. There was no reason in the year 2024 for the White Sox to be losing 121 games. So they did beat the all-time record for losses in a season. Again, that's modern baseball, 1900 to today. So it's going in the history books. And these 26 plus guys playing on this team will be in the history books on being on the worst team in baseball history, which is not something you want on your resume, kids. So, whew.
You know what you can do with that?
You can put it on the board, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you want to know someone?
The board, Hawk. Worst season in baseball history. You were there for it though, dude. How many games did you go to this year?
How many games? Oh shit. I probably went to about still 12 games.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, which is not bad in a crappy season, but you want to know what? I went to their last home game of the season. They scored, I think it was 7 runs in that game, all in one inning, all in the 5th inning, and that was the only win I went to all year. So
The one where you were hoping to go see a loss. The only one where you're like, nobody wants your team to have a 121 loss season, but if you're gonna do it, you want to be there for it. So you went to 11 games, and then the last one, the one you wanted them to lose, the 12th, they managed to win.
That's right.
So the team broke your heart in just every possible way.
Every single way. Every single way.
Man.
Jeez. Well, we will spend more time talking about that. Like we said, folks, at some point here in the offseason, we're going to be doing a whole breakdown of this 2024 season, which was an absolutely insane season, which is proving itself here in the postseason, which we'll get to in a little bit. But before we do that, Parker, we're going to do something every week where we go ahead and talk about some of the biggest stories in baseball, and we just kind of hit them real quick to talk about what's going on in the sport. And what we're going to do is we're going to go from first base to home plate in a segment we call First to Home, and we're going to cover 4 of the biggest stories in baseball right now. So let's go ahead and start First to Home. First to home here. Let's start at first base, Parker. Chris Sale, before the postseason, had back spasms, and he could not pitch for the Braves. And guess what, Parker? I think this really screwed over Atlanta.
Yeah, man. First of all, Chris Sale just so close to home for me. The guy who recorded the final out of the 2018 World Series spent the last few years just suffering along with him as he battled injury after injury. And none of it was like he's an injury-prone guy. It's all freak accidents. Like, dude hurt himself on a bicycle, and then as soon as he makes it back from that, gets hit by a comebacker and breaks his finger. Like, none of it.
Cutting jerseys with scissors, normal shit.
Yeah, exactly. Just the most random Chris Sale type shit that can happen to somebody. He's not an injury-prone guy. We always knew that. He just was super unlucky, and unfortunately, he was getting paid over $20 million a year. So at that point, we decided to do 2 things. Number one, the Red Sox decided to trade him to the Atlanta Braves for a young, up-and-coming, the youngest guy on the Red Sox 40-man roster this year, Vaughn Grissom. He was supposed to fill a hole at second base. We're not going to get into that. Chris Sale, though, went on to have what is probably going to be the NL Cy Young Award winning season for the Atlanta Braves. You put him on a competitive team. You put him on a team with hopes. You put him on a team that trades a top prospect chip for him, that believes in him and believes in the pitcher that he can be. And this is what you get from Christopher Allen Sale. And yes, the impact of that injury, it can't be overstated, because in reality, when you look at that Braves rotation, as it stands right now, it was the Detroit Tigers went out and said it, right? AJ Hinch came out and said it. It's Tarek Skubal, and then it's pitching, what he said, like pitching ridiculousness or something like that after that.
Pitching chaos.
Pitching chaos, yeah. That's where the Braves were at, too. They just didn't say it out loud. Yeah. So when you take Chris Sale out of that rotation, you kneecap a team that desperately needed him, because that is not the explosive offense we've been used to seeing from the Atlanta Braves, and they needed all the pitching they could get. And that injury to Chris Sale, man, those back spasms, and back spasms, man, like, again, just the most random thing to happen at the worst possible time.
I mean, they were going up in the wild card against a really hot Padres offense. When you take Sale out of there, they went game 1, A.J. Smith-Shawver. Then they went game 2, Max Fried. I mean, Shawver, if I'm remembering correctly, he hasn't had more than 60 innings in the majors this year.
No.
Max Fried has postseason experience, but he hasn't been all that reliable up in the last couple of months. So in a 3-game wild card series, we're really seeing this year how important it is to win game 1. You gotta win game 1, and that game 1 really sank the Braves. I mean, they really did.
I mean, we always talk about winning game 1. You take one strike in baseball, and your batting average goes down by 100 points. You lose game 1 of a 3-game series, man. We're talking about you are kneecapped, to use the same word again. But 100%. It's super unfortunate, and I don't know. I think this season, props to the Braves fans that watched the whole season, because to watch a team on the brink of making the playoffs all year, had their ups and downs, like, it has to be really hard to do. I mean, I know very well. We both know very well. You watch a team that's kind of on the brink of the playoffs and then get hit by a couple injuries. That's super hard to deal with as a fan, because you're so much better. You just don't have the talent on the field. So, I mean, when you get Chris Sale back next season, when you get Ronald Acuna Jr. back next season. I think you're going to see the same good old Braves that we're used to. You get who am I missing? Spencer Strider, who probably would have won the NL Cy Young this year. Dude's going to strike out 300 people next year.
Yep.
You get him back, I think you got the same old Braves, and I think the Braves are going to continue to have this championship window they've had open for a few years now.
Let's go ahead and go to second base here. We're talking All-Star Game jerseys and holla frickin' Eula. I believe I said that right. Let's I think that's a good breakdown of that. All-Star Game jerseys, Parker. The actual team jerseys are going to be worn during the All-Star Game. Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, it feels like we had to hit rock bottom before we went back to where we were comfortable. I mean, look at the fucking All-Star jerseys we had in this past. If you have not seen the All-Star jerseys from the Rangers All-Star Game, just go look them up and then try not to have it burned into your memory. I had to watch one of my favorite players in baseball, Jarren Duran, win the All-Star Game MVP in this pink burlap sack of a freaking All-Star jersey, man. I'm so happy these things are gone. I don't think we've had a good one since they started.
No, absolutely not. And quite frankly, we all know what this is for. It's another money grab at Major League Baseball. They're a business. We all understand that. Fantastic. Now, outside of just the All-Star Game jerseys coming back during the game, it looks like they are still going to have jerseys for like the warm-up and the batting practice, and that's all fine.
Yeah, they always had those.
Yeah, they always had something different. But what I will say is they're also tweaking the normal uniforms, away and home uniforms throughout the season, because as we know, there was a lot of complaints with Fanatics and Nike, and it looks like they are correcting some of those mistakes for next season. So that will be good for everyone involved.
Yeah, and Fanatics gets a lot of heat these days, and I've been one of the people that's been up their ass, really. Like, Fanatics screwed up this season. When you look at I've done a lot of research into the company and the guy who runs the company, and while he's, a super rich guy, and a lot of times they can't be trusted, he seems like he's coming at it from the perspective of a fan, and he understands. And I think that the genuine intent behind this was to use more expensive material that was better for the players. It just turned out that it turned into a pretty crappy viewing experience for basically everybody. And most of the players didn't end up liking them. I don't know, maybe field test them in the minor leagues instead of just one All-Star game before you do it next time.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah, we have it. We have 4 separate leagues of baseball teams that you could totally use those on before you try at the biggest level possible.
All right, we're almost home, folks. Let's go ahead and stop at third base and talk about something a little heavier, unfortunately. The all-time career hits leader in baseball, Pete Rose, passed away September 30th at the age of 83, part of the notorious Big Red Machine, the successful and exciting early and mid-'70s Cincinnati Red teams. Parker, this is a big loss, no matter what you think about his history, controversial as it may have been, a career for Pete and life for Pete Rose, still a big hit for baseball, nonetheless.
Yeah, man, he wears number 4. He wore number 14 for his entire career, and that's part of the reason I wore number 14 for a lot of, my amateur play, and not that I ever played professionally. I don't know why I fucking said it that way. But we're talking about a guy who, played corner infield, played the outfield, won a Silver Slugger, 3-time batting champion, 3-time World Series winner, World Series MVP, couple Gold Gloves, Rookie of the Year, Clemente Award winner, Humanitarian Award winner. And then the number that stands out to everybody, 4,256 hits. Just an absolute, just on the baseball Mount Rushmore, if you ask me. And they're not to, turn this into what everybody else is thinking, but, when's he going to get into the Hall of Fame? We want him in the Hall of Fame, things like that. Well, it was a lifetime ban, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think he's served his lifetime ban. So
that's a really good point. And I kind of what you were saying. I don't want to get into it too much here, but maybe we're going to spend some time in a later show talking about the role of betting in baseball. And there's arguments to be made about, he got that ban decades ago, but betting seems pretty darn prevalent now, and teams are making money off of it. So does that change the story? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to see the percentage of money that MLB is making I like to see how much of that is coming from betting, because it's a lot.
100%. 100%. All right. Let's end at home plate, as one does, and talk about what I think is just really, really odd. And the more I sit on this, the more I actually understand it. But Buster Posey, 3-time World Series champion with the San Francisco Giants, was named the new Giants president of baseball operations. Parker, what's going on?
I love the move, man. I absolutely love the move. I think it's tied into the fabric of San Francisco. Buster Posey is as important to the city of San Francisco as David Ortiz is to the Boston Red Sox. It is not unheard of for somebody who was a player to become the president of baseball operations. Look at guys like Craig Breslow for the Boston Red Sox. I mean, it happens all the time. Normally, you kind of pay your dues in some other role beforehand, and I think he's been in kind of an unnamed role in that front office for a couple years now. But I love the move. I think and like I said, it ties into that San Francisco heritage because when you look at things like the San Francisco 49ers have seen so much success ever since they hired John Lynch as the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers. So I think that when you get guys like that who are people who live and breathe that franchise, you are going to get someone who is as much a fan as the fans, as well as tied into the front office side of the game as anybody could have. And pick a position on the diamond that you would rather make your president of baseball operations and tell me you would pick them over catcher, because it's not. You're going to pick your catcher every single time, especially a guy who caught perfect games and no hitters for you, won World Series for you, was the captain of that clubhouse, even if he never had a C on his chest. He is the guy, and I think if there was a player in the modern era to get this to happen, 2 years after his retirement, it was Buster Posey. Like, it was that guy. So I'm really happy to see him do it.
100%, and it's really indicative of a trend in baseball, right? A lot, like you kind of said, a lot of these former players are finding themselves heading baseball operation teams. You have, like you said, Craig Breslow, Chris Young with the Rangers, Chris Getz with the White Sox, right? Like this is now commonplace. And if I'm a player, I'm thinking, of course, I want someone leading our baseball operations that knows what it's like to be a player on a day-to-day basis. And I think players really value that. And I think that is a trend that you're going to see. Not these Yale, smart, analytical guys. Do they have a place in the game? Of course. But previous White Sox GM, Rick Hahn was a Yale grad, right? You have your Peter Bendix, who's
Craig Breslow.
Right. He just so happens to have both, right? But Peter Bendix is, I'm sure Peter's a great guy. I don't mean to like shit on him or anything, but he's kind of a dork, right? He's a nerd. A nerd was brought into to lead baseball ops. So it's very interesting how that may be shifting and changing. And I think the respect that the players have and building a culture of good baseball, I think that really helps with someone who's been through that on a daily basis.
Yeah, we talk about the number side of the game when we talk about the on-field side of the game. And I think that the on-field side of the game has gotten lost a little bit. Not fully like people will have you believe, but I think it's gotten lost a little bit in the way that we build teams nowadays. And I think that if there's a guy like you, let me make you a promise, especially for our faithful San Francisco fans. If your team is one game out of a playoff spot at a trade deadline, Buster Posey will probably sell his children to put good players on that roster. Buster Posey knows what it's like to be in a locker room, dying for some backup when you come to the trade deadline, prepping for a pennant race. And I really think that you're going to see that fire from him. And I mean, I try to tie it to my own experiences, and I try to think how I would feel if like Dustin Pedroia was hired as the president of baseball ops. I would be dancing on rooftops, dude. Like I would be completely ecstatic with my entire life. So I'm so excited for the San Francisco fans.
And I'm excited for them too, because of course he replaces Farhan Zadi, and who has himself a great baseball resume. But I mean, I think about these San Fran fans, and I feel really bad for them, because look how close they were to landing the guy for their franchise. They didn't land Bryce Harper. They didn't land Juan Soto. They didn't land Shohei. They didn't land Arson Judge. They didn't land Carlos Correa because he had a ghost in his ankle or some shit like that. Whatever. Like, how many misses? Like, if I'm the owner, I'm thinking, dude, you need to bring someone in here. Like, you need to make this work. And I could see why they were probably just irritated with it at this point.
It's the only reason they signed Blake Snell in this offseason, I think. If they land two of those guys that you were talking about, I don't think Farhan is under the pressure he's under to make a big signing in this past off. You could tell this was a save my job offseason from Farhan Zadhi. And I think that signing Blake Snell was just such a put a Band-Aid on a gaping chest wound that, I mean, man, it sucks because he tried, like genuinely he tried. And, you know, there's a whole lot of reasons you can get into. A lot of people will talk about the city of San Francisco. I'm not ready to make that argument. I've never been to San Francisco.
Yeah. Right.
Apparently the area around the ballpark isn't the nicest place in the world, but it's even when you look at guys like JD Martinez said no because of the dimensions of the ballpark. And it's like, man, this poor franchise, this historic franchise, like
I know
one of the most historic franchises in baseball.
I know it's almost like does a historic franchise like that, like in the San Francisco area, just kind of get up and move somewhere else? Because that never happens. So
yeah, I know.
Who knows? Bye,
dude. The Bay Area would actually just fall into the Bay if that happened.
100%, 100%. If they, could you imagine? Could you actually imagine?
No.
Those poor fans over there. That's a whole other topic for all.
We will do an entire episode on the A's in the off season because I have so much to say.
100%.
Those poor fans and the people who work for that. We're talking almost at 49ers. Talk about the Giants. Congratulations to the Giants. And I know a lot of A's fans. Personally, most of the A's fans I know are now Giants fans, which is insane to say.
Weird.
And you know what? Couldn't be a better time to be a Giants fan, I guess.
100%. All right, buddy, let's roll into the postseason. This postseason has already, it's been literally 3 days.
Yeah.
And it is already blowing my mind. And let me frame it this way, because what we're going to do, folks, so we're going to go through, Parker and I are going to give you our predictions for the rest of this postseason. We are literally, as we speak, I'm going to check it right now. It looks like we are in the, final score. The Mets actually won the wild card series 2-1. They won this game 4-2 tonight as we record, so the Mets are moving on to the NLDS, which is crazy. But before we get into all of that, Parker, let me frame it this way. If I would have told you in April that the American League Division Series would consist of the Yankees and 3 teams from the AL Central, you would laugh in my face.
Yeah, especially after last season, man. Last season, the AL Central, they couldn't even hold water in a bucket. It was insane. But this year, the AL Central, this is going to sound like a shot, and I promise it's not. When you get to play 15 games against the White Sox every year, the 2024 White Sox, it does wonders for your record.
You're not wrong. But while that is true, for 3 of them to be better than any 3 other teams in the American League, I also kind of just got to give it to them. Because you look at the Tigers and the Royals, they got hot later in the year. They actually maintained some sort of success over a longer period of time. Like the games against the White Sox, 100%, they help. They pad the record. But the fact that no other teams have stepped up. Like, you look at the American League, if I were to go back to the American League even 3 or 4 years ago, it's the superior league.
Yeah.
This year, not that many strong teams, quite frankly.
No teams that are like, oh, that's a World Series team. Like, nobody sticks out. I do want to bring up an interesting statistic because we had 4 wild card series, right? The winners of those wild card series were the Tigers, the Royals, the the Mets, and the Padres. Only the Padres were the highest seed in that series.
Isn't that nuts?
That's crazy. And that also, I think, is a major justification for the current playoff format. Because I don't want to see the Astros get a free ticket to their 8th straight ALCS just because they had a great June. Like, I don't want to see that. I want to see the best team right now. I always have to tie it back to the Red Sox because I know them so well. The 2007 World Series featured a Colorado Rockies team that had won 21 of 22 games, and it was a extremely hyped World Series going into Game 1. After Game 1, it wasn't so hyped anymore. It ended up being a 4-game sweep. But at the time, you were absolutely seeing the best two teams at that moment. And I think that's what we're getting right now. We're seeing the $18.8 million payroll of the Detroit Tigers coming out playing incredible baseball. Yes. And I think that we're having better playoffs and better games for it.
100%. And this kind of goes back to what MLB always wanted out of this, right? MLB always wanted more fandoms and more cities to be involved in the postseason to grow this sport. And when you have you have Cleveland fans, you have Kansas City fans who aren't there that often. You have Detroit fans who haven't been there since 2008 or probably 2008, 2009, I believe. Like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Like, this is really growing the sport. And so what I want to do today, Parker, let's go ahead and go through series by series now that we have this wild card series wrapped up. And let's kind of put on the table who we think's walking away with this whole thing here at the end of the month. So let's start with the National League Division Series. So we have, for the National League Division Series, we have the Mets against the Phillies, and then we have the Padres versus the Dodgers. So for Mets versus Phillies, who do you got?
I'm giving you my pick in a second, but I will say, looking at this playoff bracket right now, 3 of these DS series are in-division rivalries. So these are going to be packed stadiums, electric atmospheres, pre-standing rivalries that get to play out on a playoff stage. Absolutely could not ask for a better series. Now, my pick for Mets-Phillies. Follow me on Twitter, @ParkerKirk_, because pinned to the top of my Twitter for more than 100 days now, first tweet I've got is my preseason predictions for the 2024 baseball season. And I have the Phillies advancing in this series because at the beginning of the season, I picked the Phillies to win the World Series. I don't know that there's much that you can do against their playoff rotation. I've been saying it all. I'm not the only one, but I've been saying it all season. They have an incredible playoff rotation when you boil it down to 3 starters. I don't know there's anybody that has 3 starters that can line up like the Phillies do. I think we're going to see the Phillies handily take care of the Mets. Now, the Mets today is another example, and then that 2-game doubleheader against the Braves to determine the playoff berths is another example of the Mets playing miracle Mets baseball in October. So I think we're in for a treat of a series, but I have the Phillies advancing 3-2.
Ooh, man. I'm going to have to agree with you there. I'm going to have to go Phillies for all the reasons that you said. I just think they're a team built for it, and they're a team that, of all the teams on this list, besides maybe one that we'll get into later, I think they have the most pressure to get to the World Series and win the World Series. They have sniffed it so many times in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
They're hungry, and they need this. And we'll get into the other team that I think really needs this here in a little bit. So I'm going Phillies with you. That sounds about right. You said 3-1 or 3?
I said 3-2, so I think they're going full
3-2. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with you there. Let's do Padres Dodgers. This one, Parker, I struggled with predicting this one.
Pick,
I went back and forth, and so tell me what your logic was on this one.
I picked the Dodgers, and I picked the Dodgers because they have the best player in the history of baseball. He's not pitching. Shohei Ohtani's not pitching in the postseason. The Dodgers just came out yesterday and said, it might have been today actually that they said that. Just cut fresh off the back of a 50-50 season. You look at the lineup that they can bring into the playoffs with Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. I mean, I just think that they're stacked, man. The Dodgers they're everything a baseball fan wishes they could watch on a daily basis. And I say that living in Southern California, playing on a men's league baseball team that is of our 20 team members. Of my 20 teammates, I think 16 of them are Dodgers fans. They are absolutely on the edge of their seat for every game. They live, breathe, and die by this Dodgers team. And not to say that every playoff team's fan base isn't. There's something about those Dodgers, and there's something about going and playing in the ravine in the playoffs that is going to be a really, really tough environment for any team. let alone a Padres team that, honestly, if you ask me, they're overachieving this year, higher than we thought that they would be. But I am interested to see what your pick is. Spoiler alert, I already know what it is, but they do have one of your favorite players in the world on there. So
They do. I have a very soft spot in my heart for Mr. Dylan Cease, as I'm sure is no surprise to anyone. The fact that he's not a White Sox still breaks my heart to this day, especially when he goes to the Padres and pitches a no-hitter. That's a story for another time. However, I am going with the Padres. And Parker, if I asked you what the Dodgers record this season against the Padres would be, would you think it's under or over 500?
Dodgers record against the Padres.
Correct.
Well, you're asking me, so I would imagine that it's under 500. But
way to use your context clues.
Yeah, on paper, I'm a good test taker. On paper, I mean, I would pick the Dodgers to have run away with it, probably like 10-5.
You would, but the Dodgers record against the Padres is 5-8. They have only won 5 games against the Padres this season, and the Padres have taken 8 of those. So that right there has me thinking, all right, this isn't exactly a walkaway series for the Dodgers. Secondly, I'm a vibes guy. That's just how I roll. I'm a vibes guy. And I'm telling you right now, there's something vibing there in San Diego. That team has been really hot over the last couple months of the season, and the last couple weeks of the season, I'd say. And I'll tell you what, you kind of just said it, right? We want the best team right now. And in the postseason, it is all about how you're playing at the end of the season and as you get into the postseason. April doesn't matter. May doesn't matter. How are you feeling as a team when you start October? And that's why I'm giving it to the Padres.
I love the pick. And this is going to be one of the series that I tune in for a lot of games for. It's always hard picking which ones you're going to watch because the playoffs is so insane and we all have work. But when we talk about a series that has Xander Bogaerts on one side and Mookie Betts on the other, as a Red Sox fan, I got to go watch and see what happens. I can't wait to see those two guys give each other hugs. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's gonna be a good series, and I'm picking the Dodgers, but I want the Padres to win. Is that fair? Like, I feel like that's fair.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Because I need the Padres need to. They are also a team that this wasn't the team I was mentioning when I said there was another team that needs to win it, but God, they need it. They really need it.
Yeah.
AJ Preller for his well-being, he needs it.
Yeah, I mean, they spend so much freaking money.
Man.
Like, trying to get this team. They paid Xander Bogaerts like 6 times what the man's worth, and I love him. I love Xander Bogaerts.
Totally.
But they gave him a 12-year contract at age what? Like, what is he, 65 years old? Like, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, a
Definitely
team
will
with
be at
that
the end
many
of the contract.
100%. I mean, the Padres and their 50 million infielders, they need to win something.
Yeah, they have like 15 shortstops.
All right, let's stay in the NL, Parker. Let's actually, now that we've picked our NLDS winners, let's go to the NLCS. So in the NLCS, Parker, you would have the Phillies and the Dodgers going against each other in the CS. So I'm assuming you're right in the Phillies still on this one all the way.
Yeah, man, I think that there's few things more unstoppable than Bryce Harper in the playoffs. And as the stage gets bigger, the guy's statistics get bigger. Like, it's pretty crazy. I watched the first is it like first or second pitch? First pitch home run I think he hit. You know the clip where it's like you hear Sally up in the background and then he walks up to the plate and in like that super 4K camera, and then he gets up to the plate and he smacks a first pitch home run to it's
one of the
just
best shots of all time.
Yeah, like that's going in that shot. The film from that shot needs to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I know we don't film on film anymore, but still, like that's peak baseball to me. I love Bryce Harper. Yeah. He's been one of my favorite players since he was in JUCO. And I just think that this Phillies team is going to be a unit, man. We haven't even seen him play in the playoffs this year yet. And I think that it's going to remind a lot of people who the National League has run through this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue that, really hard to argue that. And I know for me, I have the NLCS being a Phillies Padres NLCS, and this was so hard for me to go against the Phillies because I feel so strongly about everything that you're saying, but I'm riding the Padres.
Yeah, man.
There's something about them. I just feel it. And you know why I feel it? This is so dumb. This is incredibly dumb. This is just me being a quintessential Sox fan going, the worst thing in my life that could happen as a Sox fan is that Dylan Cease goes very deep in the playoffs and does well. And I'd be happy for him individually, but I know in my heart of hearts that's such a White Sox thing that would happen. And so I'm putting the Padres in the NLCS, and I think they will win the NLCS against the Phillies.
Okay. All right. Well, you're hot on the Padres right now, man.
I'm really hot on the Padres. Let's see how long it lasts, folks, because we're getting there.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the American League. American League ALDS. So we have that wrapped up. We have the Tigers versus the Guardians. We have the Royals versus the Yankees. Now, this is just wacky on this side of the house.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to go with this. Let's start with Tigers and the Guardians.
Okay, so Tigers Guards, I've got the Tigers. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have zero good reason to pick the Tigers here. None of their baseball makes sense. They sold at the deadline. And they didn't just sell at the deadline, they fire sold at the deadline, man. They sold everybody. The only person they kept on that roster, the only two people they kept on that roster that are really worth their money are Riley Green and Tarek Skubal. And you know what? They're playing great baseball right now. But there is something about a team that shows up in October and overperforms that is a recipe for electricity. And I can't look away. I keep checking those Tiger scores, man. So on vibes alone, I am picking the Tigers. And the fact that their lineup's doing pretty well right now, and a hot lineup against a mediocre pitching staff tends to win in the playoffs, so I'm going with the Tigers.
I'm with you. I picked Tigers as well. The vibes are immaculate. AJ Hinch is living his best life. He just swept his former team. I love what he said to the team the other night was, hey, somebody, I don't know who, let the Tigers get hot. And they sure as hell got hot, and I think they're going to ride that. And there is part of me that is slightly terrified as a Tiger, if I was a Tigers fan, of like exactly what AJ Hinch said. There's Tarek Skubal, and then the rest is just pitching chaos, and that will continue to be the case. But Jesus, it worked for them. Don't know why, don't know how. It's been an absolute Cinderella story already up to this point. If they even get to the ALCS, that would be bananas, and I expect them to do it. I want to see it. I just want to see it.
Yeah. No, 100%. And so, like, the Red Sox making the playoffs in 2021 is not the same thing because they had, like, an over $200 million payroll. But that was a team that we did not expect to do well, and they made it all the way to the American League Championship Series and even went up 2-0 in that series. And it feels similar to me because it's like, I don't know what this team's going to do, but I'm having fun watching it. And I feel like that's what Tigers fans are at right now. I have a buddy of mine who is the biggest Tigers fan. He actually currently lives in Japan, and he sends me Snapchats every single, 4 o'clock in the morning watching the Tigers game because he is so dialed in for these series.
That's awesome.
And I'm telling you, the city of Detroit has a lot to be excited about because this team is young, and if it continues to develop, it's going to be good for a while. They got the Lions doing good things in Detroit. Maybe Detroit's a new sports town we need to keep our eyes on because the Tigers are doing good stuff.
All right, calm down. We don't have to go that far. All right, so let's move on to, we both have Detroit going to the ALCS. Let's move on to Royals, Yankees. This one I struggled with, Parker, because I know what the choice should be.
Yep.
And I did ultimately make the choice to go with the Yankees personally. I think they will win this series, but it was something I thought about for a little bit.
Yeah, tell me about why you thought about it, because I know why I did, and I want to know what your perspective on it is.
First off, I think Kansas City is one of those teams where they, like Detroit right now, are riding their hot hand. I think the vibes are really good. I think they have the right energy entering October to ride that out. I also think they have some X factors, like a Bobby Witt Jr. I know we talk about, hey, these teams don't live or die off of one player, but it as far as they do, or as close you can get to it, is Bobby Witt Jr. I just think he does things on the field that no one else does. He literally was a difference maker in that wild card series, was a big part of them winning at least one of those games. I also think that their pitching staff, they went out and got guys like Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, who you would not expect to put in the work that they did this season and pitch how they have this season. I think these are guys that are veteran guys. I think they'll continue to pitch well into the postseason. They have the experience to do it. Whereas on the Yankees side, that team, for the first time in many years, I could say I'm confident they can actually do something in the postseason. I am concerned about their pitching.
Mm-hmm.
I am concerned about the back half of their lineup. I don't think their lineup is completely built the way it should be up and down. But when you have an Aaron Judge, when you have a Juan Soto, when you have a few really solid starting pitchers, they probably can get by just fine against a Kansas City team that's sneaky, but ultimately probably won't blow you away. So that's why I thought about this one for a little bit. But at the end of the day, what tipped me over the edge is Brian Cashman and the Yankees don't have a freaking choice. They need to get to the World Series. Bar none, regardless, live or die, doesn't matter. It's incumbent on this team to do that this year.
Yeah, no, 100%. I can't agree more. The Royals have the pitching to really, really make this interesting. Because when you talk about a team that has Seth Lugo to throw out there, and a guy like Cole Ragans, who just threw Cole Ragans in 6 innings, 80 pitches. He got pulled with a little bit of calf tightness. Yeah, man. And you talk about how that Yankees lineup, when you think the Yankees, you think Bronx Bombers. You think Juan Soto, you think Aaron Judge. You think about how much damage this team can do, especially on their good days. I mean, guys like Gleyber Torres are an all-star probably if they play for another team. But the pitching in the postseason, like you cannot ignore the fact that the Kansas City Royals have a couple guys that will pitch twice in that series if it goes long enough, that really give them the upper hand. And all you need to win is 3 games. So honestly, I picked the Yankees just like you because it's what I'm supposed to pick. But how fun would it be to watch the Kansas City Royals not only go from bad to great, but to watch the Kansas City Royals actually get payoff from a very, very productive offseason where they spent a bunch of money, invested in their roster, built around who might be the best overall player in baseball at the moment in Bobby Witt Jr. It's interesting, man. It's so fun to watch, and I'm here for it.
I'm 100% with you. And there's another reason why I want the Yankees to go to the ALCS, and that's because, if I may have a soapbox moment, earlier in the season, actually no, this was at the GM meetings last year, his first GM meetings, Chris Getz said to the press pool, "We all know the elephant in the room is that the AL Central is a weak division. And watch this happen, where we have 2 AL Central teams in the fucking AL Championship Series. I will lose my damn mind. Yep. I will lose it."
It's happening right now as we speak, man. It's gonna happen. It genuinely could happen. We didn't even say 2 words about the Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians have not had their say in this postseason yet, and they are a very good baseball team. So yeah. I mean, this AL side of the playoff bracket is in no means decided, and not to sound like a token Red Sox fan here, but if there's a team that can find a way to choke away a playoff series, it is the New York Yankees. And
100%.
And talking about all the pressure in the world, just playing in New York, needing to win to appeal to Juan Soto because that guy hits free agency anytime between, a week from now and 3 weeks from now. So it's going to be fun to watch.
It will be. Let's talk about the World Series, because right now, Parker, you have the Yankees versus the Phillies in the World Series. I have Yankees versus Padres. We know where you're going with. You expect the Phillies to win a World Series against the Yankees.
I do. I want a World Series rematch of the 2009 World Series, and I think we're going to see the Phillies pull it out. I already talked about why I believe in them in the postseason. I think that their postseason rotation is absolutely devastating. I think they have relief pitching to go with it. Their lineup is incredible. I think we're about to see a brand of Phillies baseball we've been waiting to. Honestly, we've seen the Phillies play very good baseball in October. I just think it's finally time that they get over the hump.
Oh man, that 2009 Phillies team, man. I mean, you had Ryan Howard, Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley. That was such a fun team.
Pedro Martinez.
Yeah. Oh god. Jeez. Who else is going to pull it up? Cole Hamels. Joe Blanton,
Cole Hamels,
Jamie Moyer,
Roy
who was
Oswald
46.
As well.
God,
Yep,
that's nuts.
The Ryan Howard 60+ home run season.
Let me see. I don't know. That was the 45 home run season that year for him.
Okay,
45 home
okay.
runs. I mean, you can't argue with the Phillies, right? I think we both know that there's a very good chance that the Phillies do walk away winning the World Series this year. I did go Padres Yankees, and the reason I did Padres Yankees ultimately is because I'm a sucker for a good story. Aren't we all? This is baseball. The baseball gods always, bless us with great stories. And I would love Yankees with Juan Soto to go against a Padres team that doesn't have Juan Soto, and I think that would be a hell of a story, and I think people would eat that shit up. So I'm going Yankees-Padres, and I do think the Yankees are going to find a way to win this World Series. I think they will. I am not 100% on that prediction. I know that there's a lot of room for failure there, but I'm going with my gut on that one, and so I'm going Yankees as your World Series champs in 24.
Okay. As much as it pains me to say, I think that the Yankees winning the World Series is the best case scenario for the sport.
That's interesting. Why do you say that?
I say that because the baseball is more interesting when the evil empire is the evil empire. I think that that baseball is more interesting when there's that like team at the top of the heap that you're trying to beat at every single game. And right now it's kind of been the Dodgers for a while, and it was this past season. But the Dodgers haven't won a World Series that actually counted since 1955.
Yeah.
I mean, not to detract from the 2020 World Series, which, yeah, I'm going to detract from the 2020 World Series. It was weird. It was, at the very least, it was weird, okay?
You're not a fan of the Mickey Mouse World Series, Mickey Mouse season?
I don't know about that, man. I don't know. I do think that there was something there that we probably should have learned from, and that we should have played World Series games in neutral sites. That's just me.
That's interesting.
I just, as a college football fan and as a football fan, we play all our big games I at least play the championship games at neutral sites. I think that's a pretty good model. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think that the Yankees winning is good for baseball, if only to give everybody else somebody to try to beat every single time they play them. But I will say one thing I want to add. It is, if the Yankees do win the World Series, it stinks that for the first time in decades, we wouldn't hear this when the final out was recorded.
Yankees win. The Yankees win.
John Sterling retired at the beginning of the season, simply couldn't handle the travel anymore, which completely understandable. He is missed every single day. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think the Yankees would be an interesting storyline, at least to say the least.
So I have some bad news and I have some good news for you. The bad news is that the Yankees have a good shot of winning this. I know this is going to make you feel really shitty, and I apologize in advance. The good news is our main man, John Sterling, is planning to return to the booth for the postseason.
Wait, really?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So infuriating that I'm so excited about that. That's so cool.
Yes, he did come out and he said, MLB.com posted it, looks like on September 5th, that John Sterling is coming back to the booth, that he's going to come back just for this postseason and we'll go back into retirement. But I'm with you. A guy like that, such long history in the game, even though he's a Yankee guy, I mean, you love to hear his voice. You just love it.
Yankees win.
It's so classic. Say it, John.
Oh,
There you go.
good stuff.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, especially the Red Sox just lost our decades-long voice of the Red Sox in Joe Castigliano.
Yeah.
Joe Castigs. I always call him Castigs. Oh my God. To watch the Yankees fans be able to see that, it's like if Bob Shepard came back, right? Like, it's kind of cool. It's cool they get their guy. Michael Kay, though, not to give the Yankees announcers too much credit, Michael Kay with the absolute worst postseason call I've ever heard in my life the other day. I don't know if you saw it on Twitter.
I didn't hear it.
It was horrible. It was in the Astros series. It was like a double down the line to score 3 runners, and Michael Kay was like, and driven down the line, and it's fair. 1 run scores, 2, 3 run score, and then he mispronounced the guy's name who hit the double.
What?
Like, it was terrible. It was so bad.
That's unlike him too. That's weird.
I know, yeah, he's the utmost professional.
Wow.
Like, he's the guy. But yeah, and here, you know what? Shameless plug. Go ahead and follow us at LN Baseball on Twitter. I will post the clip on Twitter, on the Twitter account, so you can hear it if you have not heard it before. But very interesting.
That's perfect. Yeah, go ahead and follow us on socials as well. We have an Instagram as well. Parker, what's our handle for Instagram?
At Late Night Baseball.
Awesome. We will be back next week. Next week's going to be interesting because when we come back, we're going to be past the midway point in the division series. So we'll have a lot to talk about. But as for us right now, that will do it for us here at the Late Night Baseball Show. Do us a big favor if you could. Subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts and leave a review. Good reviews only. Spread the word and invite others to join in on the Late Night Baseball party that we have here each week. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you next week. Goodbye, Baseball Dorks.